Heyo everybody, Haku here with my 250 sub special as we're about to hit 300 subs. But I've been working really hard on this one because I'm going to discuss, as I've talked with you about before, I'm going to discuss every single anime that I have ever seen and just not really going deep into any spoilers or anything, just a quick overview of each and like if I recommend them or not, different things like that. So if you're looking for any kind of anime recommendation from me, this is pretty much everything I see or I've seen. And I'm only counting things, like I'm not counting what we're watching now for the channel, like Mahou Shoujo Isekai Kaku, only things that I've seen the entire way through, because if I haven't seen the entirety of something, like what would be the point of me being able to recommend it or say anything like that? Also, this will be pretty much all anime I like, because if I don't like something, why am I going to watch the entirety of it? So yeah, I probably also will have to split this video into 3 parts, because when I made my notes, I have watched 66 anime, and to discuss all of those, even discussing them very quickly, is probably like maybe even 3 hours worth of video. So I'm splitting it into 3 parts, 22 anime in each part, and so 66 in all. I am counting sequels, like if it's a direct sequel like Black Butler or Black Butler 2, I will count that as one show. But if it's, say, a completely different cast, like a spin-off, like a Soul Eater or Soul Eater Not, where it was a totally different main cast, I will be counting that as a separate show. So I guess also the links to the other 2 parts, once I put them up, will be in the description. And also I'll probably put annotations at the end of this video or something like that. So, I mean, it's probably it's what you can expect. Also, if you want any help, if you have anything to ask about any of these series, want any help trying to find them, don't be afraid to ask in the comments or anything, because I answer pretty much every comment, and I will 100% be down there to help you guys out if you need to find any of these. So basically, before I get started with the list, I wanted to kind of say, since it is the 250 sub special and you guys are here because you're interested in that sort of thing, my history with anime as a whole. When I was a little kid, I remember I was probably in kindergarten maybe, and in elementary school. I remember every day before kindergarten, the Pokemon anime, Sailor Moon, and Cardcaptor Sakura would come on, and I would watch those every morning before school. Then after school, there was stuff like Gundam Wing, Outlaw Star, Rurouni Kenshin, and of course Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was like huge when I was in elementary school. And then late at night, when I was a little older, late at night, I know some of my friends would watch Full Metal Alchemist, but I never did as a kid. But I would always watch on Adult Swim at night. When I was in elementary school, I'd stay up late to watch Yu Yu Hakusho. So I loved that as a kid. Then I'd say maybe around middle school is when you get into the age where, oh, you can't watch cartoons anymore, you're going to get made fun of, that sort of thing. And I honestly did fall out of that sort of thing, and I just never really thought to get back into it. Then maybe my junior year of high school, so I was like maybe 17, 16. My junior year of high school, I saw this ad on a website I was on for Bleach, not the cleaner, but the actual anime. So I was like, screw it, I'll watch this. And so I watched Bleach. I remember liking Naruto. I think I was just kind of falling out of anime when Naruto started. So I caught up to Bleach and Naruto, which were still ongoing at the time. I watched a bunch of other anime. I rewatched a bunch of the ones from my childhood. And that's how I got back into it. So now it's been probably like 5 to 7 years since then. A good decent while, because I know a lot of you were saying that maybe you've been fans of anime for 2 years. I remember, I think maybe Anime Watcher said that. And a lot of you in the comments that comment often have said before a bit of like how long you've been into anime or how you got into it. So I just thought I'd throw that story in here before I start talking about my the 66 I've watched. Also, the order I'm going in, it's kind of a loose order because it's hard to rank. Some are better than others in different ways, but it's hard to rank it. But I'm going to go generally from my least to most favorite. So this will be my 66th favorite that I've seen out of the 66, and up to my 45th favorite. The next one will be 44 to 23, and then the top 22 are going to be in the third part of this. So also, I forgot to say, the reason, if this isn't as high quality as usual, it's because I'm using the OBS software to record, and I use OBS software to record instead of what I normally do, even though it's a lower quality. I use it instead when I want to put stuff up on the screen because it's easier to do that in editing. And for this, whenever I'm talking about a series, I'm going to say the title, and if it's released in a different title in English, I'll say the English title as well that it was released under, and I will have the actual promo pictures of the like posters from My Anime List and everything, the promo pictures for the show up in the corner of the screen. That way, if you do search it by the title I say and you're seeing a bunch of stuff, you can at least like have the picture up here in the video to say, okay, I can look for something that looks similar to that, just to try to help you guys out to find this stuff more if it is something that you're looking forward to watching based on my description of it and how much I say I enjoyed it. So without huge long speech out of the way, let's finally get into talking about the least favorite anime that I have watched all the way through, going up toward my 45th favorite. A lot of you guys may have been able to actually guess what my least favorite that I've seen the entire way through is, and it is Taboo Tattoo. And for Taboo Tattoo, before I go into my thoughts on anything, I'll give a quick description of it, just from the top of my head. It's sort of like this guy, it's a martial arts kind of action adventure where this guy finds a tattoo on his hand that gives him special powers, and he goes and fights other people with tattoos and stuff. Pretty basic kind of shonen premise, except it was it was generic and yet very bad at the same time. Like, it's one of those things where I guess it's certainly not the worst out there. Probably not even the worst I've seen. The worst I've seen in its entirety, but it is just pretty much there's no weight to it. I have notes in case I forget anything that I wanted to say, but like there's no weight. Nothing feels dangerous. Nothing feels important. It just is what it is. And that works for like a comedy or something, but it doesn't work for an action. Like, if there's an action where you're not afraid of anybody really dying, then what's the point? Also, the pacing was incredibly weird, and the pacing being incredibly weird goes into what I think the worst part of it was. And the worst part was, it was the most rushed thing I've seen in my life. It was rushed to hell and back. Like, it was very bad in that way, and that's really, really the worst part for me, is how rushed it was. Another big problem for me were that the good guys were not very enjoyable. Like, the bad guys were much more interesting, much more developed characters, and I saw in the comments like every week where people were like, I'm kind of cheering for the bad guys. I really feel for them a lot more. And that's how I was. I preferred the bad guys in Taboo Tattoo. And really, it's a shame, because I think the setting for it is actually really good, and I think it looked great at first, and then the actual plot just spiraled downhill quickly because it was so very rushed. So yeah, would I recommend you actually watching it? If you're like a writer or something and looking for what not to do in writing, it's probably good in that sense. Or if you're just looking for something that this did fall into the place where it was so bad you would laugh at it and enjoy it, sort of like a The Room kind of situation, where it's not so bad that it's boring, but it's so bad that it's just cheesy and ridiculous, and you laugh at how bad it is. So if you're looking for something like that, I could recommend it for that as well. But if you're looking for something that's actually seriously good or seriously enjoyable, it probably isn't for you. And next up, my 65th favorite anime that I've ever seen is Accell World. And Accell World's another one of those. I think it's the only other one on this list that I would say, along with Taboo Tattoo, is bad. The rest I would say aren't bad, they're just not as good as some of the others that are above them. But this I would kind of say is bad, and it's another one that's sad because I think that the actual setting, the actual world is genius. I love the world and setting in Accell World, and I loved a lot of the side characters as well. The side characters were really good. The problem with Accell World, though, is the main characters, and this is another When I talk about the downside to some of these, that's probably going to be a bit. And like for the general description of this, it's one of those. Well, a lot of you, even if you dislike Sword Online, like I didn't watch all of Sword Art Online because I thought it was terrible. Accell World is actually, I'm pretty sure, written by the same person, and it is for sure 100% set in the same universe, like 20 years later. But it's pretty much like the whole go into a video game, and if you die in the video game, you lose something. You maybe die in real life. It's been a while. I don't remember the actual rules of the game, but it's pretty much one of those go into a video game world kind of anime. And yeah, the main character is very not good. Like, the main character is fat and short, and it's like they're trying to say, oh, he's fat and short. That's different from the normal main character. That's what makes him cool. It would if he was a good character. Like, if he was a good character and you're like, oh man, he's fat and short, but he's a better character than all of these good-looking stereotypical anime guys, yeah, that totally works. But it doesn't work when their entire character was like, oh, look at him, he's different, he's fat and short. That was like his only character, was that he was fat and short. And it's like, that doesn't work. Just like, your whole character being that you're fat and short doesn't work. You have to have something else. And that was about it. And a couple of the other main characters, like the girls around him, all falling in love with him and stuff, like a typical harem style, it's like, that was their only character. Their only character was that they were the stereotypical harem girl, except that instead of normal, they were in love with the fat and short guy. It's like, that doesn't work. That's not a character. It's not. So yeah, it's one of those things where it had such good things going for it, but ended up being very bad. The fights were pretty okay. I liked the fights. Like I said, I like the setting as a whole. Side characters, I really, really liked Yuniko Kozuki. I thought she was a really interesting character. And Ash Roller is probably one of... If you want to look up anything from this, look up Ash Roller. Ash Roller is like one of my favorite, one of the funniest anime characters from all time. And it's like one of my favorite anime characters is from like my second to least favorite anime that I've seen all the way through. But Ash Roller is hilarious. And I think that's actually everything I had to say about this. Yeah, I mean, it's such a shame. This is one of those that's such a shame because it had so much going for it, but it kind of just bombed with character. The 64th anime on my list is Wakako Zake, and it's not released in English in any different name, it's just Wakako Zake, and it's a series of shorts. I think they're only like a minute, and I think episodes of this are only like a minute and a half long, 2 minutes, something like that. And pretty much every single episode is just a woman going home from work and eating dinner somewhere. It's pretty much just like food porn, the anime. It's just, she goes, she eats somewhere for dinner. That's the entirety, and she talks about her dinner and stuff. That's the entirety of the show. So it's not necessarily bad, it's just short, it's just chill, calm, whatever. So if you're looking for something like that, something that really won't take up any of your time to just sit through and check out, I mean, it's a very easy to watch thing. So yeah, that's really all there is to say about it, honestly. My 63rd favorite anime ever was Blood Lad, and for Blood Lad, it was kind of a hard one to get into for me. The basic description is this girl dies and ends up with this guy in the demon world named Stas, and ends up meeting a bunch of other demon people of different varieties like werewolves and stuff like that, and pretty much just goes on for there. It's pretty simple like that, really, because we didn't really get very deep into the story. It was pretty short. I think only like 12 or 13 episodes, which is normal, but it didn't do much with the 12 or 13 episodes. I think that's why it's so low on the list, because I thought it had a good premise, I thought it had a good setup, I thought the characters were good, I thought it was really funny, but it seemed slow, it seemed like we didn't get through very much, and it just seemed like an intro to a long-running series like Naruto or Bleach or something. It seemed like an intro to a series. So it's like we got the intro and that was all we got. So I guess that's my problem with it. It was just hard to get into because it didn't seem complete. It didn't seem all the way full to me. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Is that, yeah, it was a story that didn't seem long enough. It didn't stand well on its own with the content it had. The 60-second favorite anime that I've ever watched would be Lucky Star. And Lucky Star for me was really funny, and I, like pretty much everybody that watched it, loved Kanata, and she kind of really was the show for me. But really, even though I thought it was funny and it had good parts, there was a lot of just minutes of time between funny parts and between jokes and comedy bits that were pretty boring, and that's a complaint I see about it a lot, is that it's a bit boring. I do think it's worth watching for the comedy, and yeah, for those of you wondering about any sort of plot description, it is pretty much just a normal school comedy focusing around a otaku girl named Kanata and her normal friends, or more normal friends, but the characters are all different. It's just basically your generic school comedy with a more cartoonish art style. And it's known for being a pretty good comedy, and it is pretty good. There are a lot of boring scenes between the comedy scenes, but it's good, and actually like the kind of simple style, the simple animation. I didn't mind any of that at all. I actually think it made it better. I kind of like when something does that occasionally. And yeah, like I said, Kanata made the series, waifu for lifu. And that's pretty much all that Lucky Star was for me. My 61st favorite anime that I've seen is Gatchaman Crowds. Now for Crowds, there was an anime way back in like the 70s or 80s, I think, or maybe even the 60s. It's like really, really old, called like Science Ninja Team Gatchaman or something like that. And it's sort of like one of the old Power Ranger style shows. And this is sort of a revamp of that for like a new era sort of deal. And it actually, the animation looks really, really good. I really like the setting. I love the characters. The characters for me are the best part of Gatchaman Crowds. And basically they just get a book and they have this power to transform into an Iron Man style mech suit and go fight evil and stuff. But where the characters were amazing, the plot was super freaking weird and cheesy. Like, it's probably the weirdest and cheesiest plot I've ever seen, if I'm going to be completely honest. So it's a very odd one. I love the animation. I love the music. I love the design. It's very creative, but it's also weird. It's a very, very weird one. As for characters in particular, I loved OD and Ututsu, and I also liked Hajime Ichinase and Berg Katz. I loved both of them as well. So very good on the character spectrum. I would say watch it for that, but it may be a little bit hard to follow the plot. Also, they have a second season, Gatchaman Crowds Insight, but I have not actually watched all of Insight. I've only watched the first maybe... I've watched the first few episodes when it started airing, and then I was like, I'll just marathon it someday when it's done airing. I don't feel like watching it week to week. So that's where I am with Insight. Next up, my 60th favorite anime that I ever seen, and that would be Bokusatsu Tenshi Dokuro-chan, and the second season of the same title. And in English, it was released as Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-chan. So it's basically a just nonsense ecchi comedy, and I really like nonsense comedy shows, so I thought it was funny. I really enjoyed it. I love the little cutout anime gags. It's the basic premise is that it's about an angel who comes to Earth and just gets attached to this guy for whatever reason. It's been years since I watched, but basically she keeps killing him. Like, no matter what she ends up doing, she ends up killing him in horrible, terrible ways. But all she has to say is pipiru piru pipiru pi, and he comes back to life every time. So the basic comedy revolves around him getting killed in a ton of different random ways, and her bringing him back to life, and him just wanting the sweet release of real death after a while, and her just being pretty sadistic with completely killing him and bringing him back to life all the time while still maintaining this air of cute little anime girl. So it was really funny. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I watched it years ago. It had sort of silly and crude humor, but I didn't mind. And Dokuro was pretty click waifu sexy too. So yeah, I think it's worth a watch if you're into that sort of nonsense comedy. I know a lot of people probably aren't, but I do prefer that sort of comedy. So yeah, that's it for Dokuro-chan. My 59th favorite anime of all time is Helsing Ultimate, and the basic premise of it is there's this vampire Alucard who goes around hunting and killing other vampires for this chick named Helsing, or Integra, yeah, the Helsing organization. You know what I mean. But yeah, and the way it works is that Helsing was the original series, like way back, probably like almost 20 years ago, maybe even. Yeah, it's a pretty old one. And then a more recent Helsing Ultimate was the OVA series, since the original, like a lot of old anime, deviated pretty far from the manga. Helsing Ultimate is a more traditional and strictly to the manga adaptation of it. So I liked Ultimate more just because I personally usually like when things adapt closer to the manga that they're based on. And it was newer, it looked nicer and everything, but I did like both. Now that said, I thought that both could get a bit boring at times, but I still enjoyed them. I always thought Ceres Victoria was pretty sexy, and my favorite character was always, what was his name, Father Anderson, the priest. He was always my favorite character. So it's a really enjoyable one. I think it's one of the classics that I would recommend watching. So yeah, one of the classics I'd recommend watching with Helsing. And I'd also recommend watching Helsing Ultimate just because it's really good. I mean, there are a lot of things I liked better personally, but it is really good. So yeah, that was it for my thoughts on Helsing and Helsing Ultimate. Next up, my 58th favorite anime of all time is No Game, No Life. Or I've seen some places even like use the abbreviation, what is it, like NGNL as the actual title. So if you see that, then that could possibly mean it too. But No Game No Life is the actual official full title. And I really liked it at the beginning. I thought that the game aspect of it was really creative. Because again, to give the basic premise, it's these two siblings that are not in education, employment, or training. They just stay at home all day playing video games. They get sent to this world where everything, all your money, everything in life is based on games and gambling, I guess, is a good way to describe it. But yeah, betting on games. But I thought that the whole game aspect, and not like traditional fighting or anything, was really creative at first. But then after a while, it did start to wear and get a little bit tiresome. Also, I thought later on it got to be a bit too fan servicey, where normally I'm like, fan service is good if it doesn't distract from the plot. And I do think there were a couple times when it did distract a little from the plot. Also, for the comedy, I thought the comedy and the references were good in No Game No Life. Again, it wasn't the funniest thing I've seen, but it did have good comedy. I remember a few scenes that I thought were pretty funny. And really, the only big thing that kept me watching this until the end was Shiro and waiting for some Shiro panty shots. God, that sounds terrible, but yeah, Shiro was pretty smexy waifu, and that's my biggest reason for sticking with No Game No Life. My 57th favorite anime that I've watched in its entirety is Watamote, and this one's going to be a bit of a doozy, so I'm going to have to look at the official title. But it's mostly known as Watamote with fans, and on most, if you're looking for it, most searches and most websites, you'll get it from searching Watamote. But the actual full title is Watashi ga motenai no wa do kangaetemo Omaira Gawarui, or the English title, no matter how I look at it, it's you guys' fault I'm unpopular. And yeah, sorry if I had trouble reading that. If you guys have never seen my handwriting, it is chicken scratch very bad. Like, I can barely even read my own handwriting. Yeah, that is a pretty long freaking title, so Watamote works way better. But the basic premise is it's about this it's a comedy, but it's also a bit of a look into the psychology of this girl who's going from middle school to high school. Like, she's not very attractive, flat-chested, she's not good at talking to others, and she has the sort of complex that it's everybody else's fault, they're too stupid for me to fit in with them, and it's sort of a realistic personality and look. I think it's a really good look into the mind of somebody in that sort of situation, so I think it's really good in that sense. And like, it had real moments of serious creativity to me. I thought it had really good creativity, and there were I'd say almost all of its humor was referential, like referencing other anime and stuff, and I thought that it did the referential humor very well, so I would definitely give it high marks for that. But between the comedy and between the character building parts, there were quite a few. This is something I found myself so far recording this saying a lot about a lot of these anime, that while there were some really good parts, there were a lot of boring, dull moments between the good parts. And now, like, recording this, that's kind of what I'm thinking about this. There were a lot of really good parts with Watamote, but there were also just stretches of boring in between them. And I think that's a problem with a lot of comedy anime, so that may be just something you have to deal with a comedy anime. Of course, there are comedies that do not fall into this thing that are going to be higher up on my list, but that's something that I've seen a lot in comedy anime. Again, my favorite thing in this anime and my top reason for sticking with it is the lewd Tomoko scenes. Tomoko, yes, and there's a genre of, like, everybody's like, the tsundere, the yandere, and all these different sort of, the nadeshiko, I think, is the wifely good girl. Like, the different archetypes of anime waifu. This does great at a really rare archetype of the so ugly she's sexy kind of archetype. And I don't know, I feel like Watamote does that very well with Tomoko. So I think that's why I like it. I like it because it's different. It's not the best for me, personally. I know a lot of people really, really like it, but for me, I didn't think it was the best. I just thought it was really creative a lot of the time. So I'll give it high points for the creativity. It's like I can't think of anything else that I've seen that I would really compare it to very much. So yeah, those would be my thoughts on Watamote. I would definitely, if you're into, or if you're okay with like slice of life, comedy, stuff like that, it's definitely worth a try. If you only watch big, fancy actions and mechas, you're probably not gonna be that much into it. So yeah, Watamote. Next up, my 56th favorite anime would be Oremo, or Ure no Imoto ga Kawaii Wake Ganai. And that would be, in English it was released as My Little Sister Can't Be This Cute. So, yeah, I never watched all of the second season because basic premise of this, at the very beginning, the guy finds out his little sister's a closet otaku. She's a popular girl, but she's been hiding this whole time that she's secretly into erotic video games and anime and manga and stuff. And he finds that out, and he like tries to cover for her and take her to all these manga conventions and stuff like that without her popular friends noticing. And I thought that was a really cool setup. It was really interesting and creative, and it worked really well. It did pretty good at comedy. It was pretty funny. Not the funniest thing by far, but it was pretty good with comedy. But then the second season focused way, way more on the romance, and it was a bit of an incest romance with him and his sister. And it's not that I particularly think that's weird. Well, I mean, it is, but I feel like I would be totally cool with that story if they wrote it a bit better. But it seemed very cheesy and cliche, and it seemed to just try to... And again, this sounds terrible coming from me, who's like, oh yeah, waifu, waifu all the time, but I feel like it was like, okay, we need to pander to these fetishists really freaking hard, and it ended up just being pretty cliche and not very well written. Like, the romance hurt it. The romance was forced. And I guess that means it's another anime, and I have said already a lot, and I'll probably say a lot again in this video, that there are so many good anime where without romance they would be like near perfect, but the romance just ruins them, or so many bad anime that would have been good if it wasn't for the romance ruining it. Romance in anime is the biggest problem for me. And I know a lot of you can disagree, and there are really good romances that could be higher up on my list. But for the most part, I would say 99% of romance in anime is cliche and horribly written. Like, it is like it's the bane of anime right now, especially all of the like ones that are trying to copy Sword Art Online and be this cringy cliche romance. It is not flying. It's not good. But Inoremo actually, even though I just went on the rant about how bad romance is in anime, compared to other ones that we've had, the romance wasn't that bad in this particular one, but it certainly drug it down a bit. So yeah, not the worst romance, but not good either. And that's really, really what knocks it down for me. Next up, my 55th favorite anime of all time is Dragon Ball / Dragon Ball Z. And this one was an odd one to try to figure out where to put on the list, because a lot of you are probably going to be happy it's on the list, and a lot of you may be upset that it's not higher, because I know there are a lot of fans of it out there, but I'm actually not a very big Dragon Ball fan. Like, it's only this high on the list because I watched it and was obsessed with it when I was a little kid, but it's one of those things where I watched it and loved it as a little kid, but going back to it as an adult, it's just really weird and cheesy, and I'm not the biggest fan as an adult. That's why I've never seen Kai, GT, or Super. I've actually seen most of the movies, though, actually. I've seen most of the movies, and I've seen the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. So, yeah, it was just a childhood obsession, but I find it kind of silly and stupid now as an adult. It's certainly not the worst thing out there. No, far, far from it. It's just, it's not very good compared to maybe more modern stuff, story-wise, but I really, really respect it because it's a grandfather of anime, a grandfather of shonen, so I respect it a lot in that sense. It's one of those things where even though I don't particularly like it now, I did when I was younger, and I think it's a pretty good anime for younger audiences to get them into anime. So yeah, I respect it a lot, even if I don't necessarily think it has a very good plot or anything. So yeah, that's where I would say Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z are. And I didn't do a... yeah, I don't think I'm gonna say any sort of description for it, because you guys probably either have heard of it, have seen it already, or if you haven't, I don't know how well I can describe it, other than grandfather of shonen. Imagine if One Piece, Naruto, or Bleach took place in the early 80s. That's the best I can describe the feel of Dragon Ball. So yeah, that's all I got there. My 54th favorite anime of all time that I've seen completely is Mirai Nikki, released in English as Future Diary, and the OVA that came after it, Mirai Nikki Redial, because the OVA kind of goes with it as an epilogue. And for this, I thought the setting was great, and the setting is basically this. So, God, or the God in this world, God fills in the, like, he picks 12 people that keep diaries, and he fills in the future entries of their diaries so they know what they are going to write in their diaries in the future. So it's kind of giving them a bit of an ability to see into the future, and basically the last one standing gets to become the new god. So they all go out trying to kill each other and everything, and it just gets convoluted and complicated from there, like Death Note style convoluted and complicated. And honestly, that setting is good. That's really strong, and you would think it would lead to a really strong plot, and it did for the first good while, and then towards the very end, it's like, let's not plot, let's not do that. But the setting, other than the setting being great, the side characters, I loved so many of the side characters. But the huge, big problem with this anime, the main two characters, Gasai Yuno and Yuketeru something, are horrible. They are some of the worst characters in anime for me. They're just terribly written. They're extremely annoying. They're like Sakura from Naruto almost level annoying. They are rough to deal with. So while the side characters are like really good, the main characters are really shit. And they are some of the most unlikable characters. And while there are amazing plot points in this throughout the series, there are also, especially towards the end, a lot of really bum plot points. So this is one of those things where it's almost a bit bipolar. There are really great things that I think are amazing about this anime, and then really bad things that I think are totally shit about this anime. But I can boil down all the shit things to the two main characters, Yuno and Yuketeru. If they weren't there, this series would be like 10 out of 10. Or if they were good characters, 10 out of 10. But they are shit, cliche, annoying, just poorly written. They're just not good characters. So that for me is what drags Mirai Nikki, which has one of the better settings that I've seen, and just sort of a maybe my favorite take on a survival game. It has such a good setup for a plot and a lot of really great plot points, but the characters just drag it down so far. And yeah, guess that's all I have to say about Mirai Nikki. Would I recommend it? Yes. I definitely would, because of the good things. The good things in it are very good. It's just that, and you might even like the main characters, but I'm just going to give you a fair warning. If you watch it, you will likely like the series, but I don't know if you'll like the main characters or not. They're pretty shit. My 53rd favorite anime ever, Dancing the Vampire Bund. Now, this one, sexy lollies, am I right? But basically, the plot for this is that Mina Tepes, the new, I think, Vampire Queen, I think she maybe just became Vampire Queen, I don't really remember. It's been a while since I watched and read. But she pretty much decides to out to humans, like tell them, hey, vampires exist and they have this entire time. And she sets up a community, an official place called the Vampire Bund, where vampires can come and live in peace publicly. So it's one of those things where I'm not a huge fan of the whole vampire genre, or I'm not a big vampire fan in general, but this is one of the better, possibly the best vampire works that, for me personally, that I like, just because it's such an interesting concept that she makes it like public, and it focuses a lot on the politics of people reacting and saying, we don't want vampires living near us, and the xenophobia having to do with it. The vampires like, we can't live publicly alongside humans. It's really good in that sense. Also, it has a lot of the traditional anime tropes, like the main character is the guy protecting her, and she's a lolicon and all that, or she's a lolly. I think lolicon would be a person attracted to that. So, yeah, so there are like, I don't know, there's some weirdness to it, and it may not be your cup of tea, but I really thought it was pretty enjoyable. I liked it enough as well that I actually went and read the manga too, and I liked the manga even more, so that's also something for you guys to check out if you want. Also, Mina, best girl. The plot and animation was very average, I'm not gonna lie. It was super average. Probably a bit above average if I'm gonna be fair and kind to it. I would say it's a bit above average. But the romantic stuff, again, meh. The romantic stuff was cliche. It was very generic. So yeah, that's another thing that takes it down. The romance, again, making a series less good than it would have been if it didn't have the romance thrown in there. But despite all of that, I really personally love this one. So I would say if you're into lollies, or if you're into vampire stuff, check it out. Or if you just want to give it a chance, check it out as well. The anime was good. The manga I thought was even better. So yeah, either way, I would recommend it. Dance in the Vampire Bund. Next up, my 52nd favorite anime, Needless. Now, Needless for me was really, really enjoyable, I guess. I don't know if exciting's the right word, but the action was really, really good. And it's basically an action adventure shonen about this kid who goes off and I don't know, maybe that's not a good way to describe it. I guess the best way is to give the basic setting of the world. Years after nuclear war in sort of a post-apocalyptic area called Tokyo's Black Spot. This dude showed up like 100 years ago or something. I have no idea. That they called the Second Christ because he had all kinds of crazy powers. And then once he disappeared from the world, people started showing up, each with one power. And everybody's power was all different, so they were called shards of the Second Christ power, and the people that had those powers were called the Needless, and plot goes on from there. Kid teams up with this really cool priest guy who can steal other people's shards, stuff like that. So really, it was really, really funny. I thought the comedy was good. And then I like it a lot personally. I did go and read the manga. I liked it enough for that. But honestly, the plot and characters were mostly just bleh. It's like this was a very anime that I really personally liked. So yeah, I don't think it's particularly made better than most anime. I don't think it's particularly a better story, but I personally liked it more. So yeah, still really enjoyable to me, and that's kind of all I got on Needless. My 51st favorite anime is Cardcaptor Sakura. So, Cardcaptor Sakura, again, for me, is more of a childhood favorite one. I did rewatch it as an adult and thought it was still really good, actually. But basically, it's kind of your stereotypical magical girl back when it wasn't as popular, back when it was more of a newer thing. So yeah, it's about this girl with magical powers that goes around collecting cards that give her magical powers and defeating the beasts that come from each of the cards. It's been a bit of a while. And that's pretty much it. It's one of the original sort of magical girl anime. So it's a childhood favorite that I think still stands up to anime today. It's really cute and fun. It's just kind of a normal, what you'd think of magical girl anime. And I think it may actually be where my love of the magical girl genre originated, since I did love it as a kid. And again, the only bad part, I think legitimately the only negative I have here is the romantic stuff in it is not very good. And again, like I said, it's one of those things where it's not that the romance necessarily ruins it, but it would be a far better series if the romance was just not in there whatsoever. So that's one of the reasons romance hurts anime so badly. It's not that it completely ruins it, it's that it takes stories that would be much better without it and then just makes them not as good with it. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. Cute, fun. If you like magical girl anime and want to see an earlier one, I'd say check it out. Or if you just like magical girl anime in general, definitely check it out. It's really enjoyable for me, even today. So, yeah, that's it for Cardcaptor Sakura. Let's get into our top 50. Next up, my 50th favorite anime that I've seen all the way through was one that we reviewed week to week for the channel, Kiznaiver. Now, Kiznaiver had a great concept, and the basic concept is this. Is 6, I believe it was 6 of them, or was it 7? Trying to remember here. It was 6 of them, right? Yeah. So the 6 kids are connected. Their pain is connected. So every time one of them is hurt, the pain is split between the 6 of them. One of them gets into a car accident or something, that the pain and injuries from that would be split between the 6 of them. So that's the basic concept, and it's a really good concept that had me really excited for the series, but the actual plot kind of bombed. And week to week, there were a lot of great things I had to say about it, especially about the production, because looking at the production, this is some of the nicest looking animation. This is some of the most beautiful art, some of the greatest soundtrack choices, and yet the plot is thin, very thin. And the biggest reason for it being thin, and I said it week to week all the time, is the romance. And again, preaching about romance, but every single episode that focused on romance was a shit episode of this series. And I would give it like a 4 or less out of 10 or something, because it was just not good when they focused on romance. The romance was forced, quick, easy, unrealistic, just like most romance in anime. It was like most romance in anime. It was just generic anime romance. And that hurt it. And I would say every week, the episodes where they focus on friendship and the bonds they've gotten from sharing each other's pain were great episodes and great moments. So if they had focused completely on that and on what sharing pain did to them as characters, it would be a pretty much perfect series. But they didn't focus on that enough. They kept shifting focus to romance that had nothing to do with character development. It had nothing to do with anything. It distracted from the plot. And that's why, again, I say I hate romance in anime all the time. It isn't part of the plot. It distracts from the plot. Without it, the plot would be the same, except better, because it didn't have something interrupting it all the time. So that is the huge problem with romance that really affects Kiznaiver pretty badly. That's why it isn't higher up, despite being a great concept and a great and really greatly made. The thing that keeps it from being higher is romance. Next up, my 49th favorite anime of all time is Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. Now this one is pretty much, it just gets off on crude and vulgar humor. That's pretty much the gist of the show. It's about these two angels that got kicked out of heaven because one's addicted to sex and just has sex all the time, and one's addicted to sweets and only cares about her food and gluttony and stuff. So, yeah, it's just crazy, vulgar humor, just wild, crazy shit happening all the time. I wouldn't call it nonsense comedy, because it generally goes with a certain theme, but its comedy is mostly referential, I'd say. A lot of it is, at least. And the comedy just works. There's, like I've said before in reviews of comedy series, it's hard to judge comedy more than anything else that it is to judge. Because comedy is very, very subjective. There are different tastes that matter a lot more in comedy than it does with other things. Comedy isn't objectively good or bad. Usually, I mean, something can be so bad that pretty much everyone can agree it's bad, but for the most part, it's pretty subjective. So there's nothing I can really say to explain why the comedy and jokes work, but they just work. And to me, it certainly wasn't the funniest. There are way funnier comedies on this list that I have seen, but it was still really funny. And I loved it, I think, more than the comedy. I loved it for just the wild, crazy atmosphere, just the fun of it. More than being funny, it was fun, and I really had a fun time watching it. I love the art style, how it was sort of a take on the American cartoon art style. I like the way they just sort of did that. And also, Scanty and Knee Socks, the Demon Sisters. Hello, for those of you who've watched Scanty and Knee Socks, dog. But, yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So, yeah, that's it for Panty and Knee Socks. Let's move on. My 48th favorite anime of all time is actually Fairy Tail. Now, for just a quick rundown, for those of you who don't know anything about it, it's just a long-running action-adventure shonen, and it's based around mages and magic and stuff like that. Now, at first, I thought it was going to be a really good long-running shonen, something along the lines of Naruto or Bleach or something, but it both never quite reached, like at its peak, it never quite reached even the quality of Naruto or Bleach, and then it declined. Like most long-running shows that I can think of, except a very few, it definitely declined. But even at its height, it wasn't as good as a lot of others. So pretty much when I first saw it, I thought it was a really good shonen. I enjoyed it. The first few arcs were all really solid, leading up to Tenrojima, which was an amazing arc of anime. The Tenrojima arc in Fairy Tail is amazing. Then after Fairy Tail, it quickly declined until there was the Grand Magic Games arc, which was okay. Honestly, I liked a good few parts of it. The, Dragon Invasion arc thing that I thought was highly disappointing. Like, I thought the way it was set up should be like the hypest arc in the series, and then it wasn't good. It was okay, there were good parts, but overall, it's really disappointing for all that they set up. Then the Tartarus arc happened. And sorry for those of you that were fans, but the ending to the Tartarus arc ruined most of the series for me. It just sent the series into the shitter. And that's where the anime ended. After that, the anime did do the Fairy Tail Zero arc, but disregarding that, everything after the Tartarus arc in the manga turned into total garbage, like worse than Bleach's last arc, kind of bad. And you guys know I used to be a huge Bleach fan, and then I was like, okay, the last arc of Bleach, this is ruining the series, this is ruining all the good stuff from before. That's what Fairy Tail has done from Tartarus arc on. It's been so bad that it ruins the good earlier in the series. So luckily, that's why the anime is so high up, because we didn't get to some of the even worse stuff that's to come in the manga. It ended before it got too bad. So, it's just, there were a lot of things where it could have been great, but ended up being disappointing. So that, I guess that's my 2 big points for Fairy Tail. I'd say if you like long-running action shonen and don't really care much about the quality, go for it. That's why I watched it, and that's why I enjoyed it, because I do enjoy Fairy Tail. It's one of those where I think it sucks, but I still watch it, I still read it, even though I think it sucks. So really, my two big points were everything from Tartarus arc on is really pretty dang bad. It declines pretty badly, and it doesn't really hold up well with time, I feel. It hasn't. And the other big point is that even at its height, even at like Tenrojima or the Eurasian Sace arc was great, even at those big, good arcs, it still doesn't really measure up to the good arcs of Bleach or Naruto, or let alone One Piece. So, that's where Fairy Tail is for me, sadly. Next up is my 47th favorite anime, and I'm counting Digimon, the original Digimon Adventures, Digimon Adventures 02, and Digimon Tamers. I loved Digimon as a kid, and also I'm not counting the Pokemon anime from this list because it's kind of hard to separate it up into areas, and I haven't seen all of the different series that go into the Pokemon anime. I've seen most of it, but it's kind of hard to do, and it's kind of hard to judge because it's been going on for so long, and some parts of it were really good and some parts were really bad. So Pokemon's not going to be up here, but let's get back to actually talking about Digimon. I loved it as a kid, and I still need to watch Try. I haven't seen Digimon Adventures Try yet. I need to watch it. But I loved the original Digimon Adventures and Adventures 02, and even rewatched them as an adult. Still love them. And rewatched Tamers as well as an adult, and Tamers is my all-time favorite. I love Digimon Tamers. After Tamers, as a kid, came Frontier, and I was already kind of older when Frontier came out, so I was kind of falling out of that sort of thing. And in addition to that, I kept with Pokemon, but I abandoned Digimon around Frontier just because, the biggest and best part of Digimon for me was the relationships between the Digimon and their Digidestined partners or whatever, and Frontier completely just abandoned possibly the best part of the show by having people that can just transform into Digimon. It was a weird concept, and I didn't think it was very, I just never liked it. So I didn't end up watching any after Frontier, but for the first 3 series, I love all 3 of them. I love the movies of the first 2 as well. So I would 100%, even as an adult, recommend going back and watching them because they're really fun and enjoyable. And that's where I am with Digimon at number 47. Next up, my 46th favorite anime that I've ever watched is Roka no Yusha, or in English, I believe it was Braves of the Six Flowers. And for this one, it had a really great setting. I think the setting in the world is awesome. I think this would actually work very, very well as a long-running shonen. Like, if they had decided to make this sort of like a One Piece, Naruto, Bleach sort of thing, it would have been a good series. And I think it not being set up like that kind of holds it back. Because what I think about it is, before I even get to my description of the series, like, I feel like it felt, watching it, like you were watching an arc from a long-running series. And it would have been a great arc if it was an arc from a long-running series. But just standing alone as a full show on its own, it doesn't really work very well. But basically it's about when the Demon King wakes up, these 6 heroes have to, these 6 heroes get chosen and they have to go slay the Demon King. Well, the bad thing about this was that they never went to slay the Demon King. They never even made it to the Demon King's lands. They ended up getting stopped at this place where there were 7 of them when they met up, and they're like, whoa, there's only supposed to be 6 of us. So they spend the entire anime looking and trying to figure out which one of them is the fake 7th one. And that's the entire show. The entire show is them trying to figure out which one is the 7th. So while it did have great settings, great character designs, and I love the characters themselves, the animation style, most of the time I really liked. It wasn't the best, highest quality animation, but its drawbacks had a little bit of style to them most of the time, so I didn't think it was bad. But yeah, overall it just felt like an arc cut out of a long-running anime that wouldn't work as a standalone anime. Like if trying to figure out, whoa, there's 7 of us, which one is it? If we had an introduction arc, maybe another arc of them meeting up, then the 3rd arc was them noticing, oh, there's 7 of us when they met up, and trying to figure out which one is the 7th. That would have worked, but I feel like doing this doesn't really work. So, and I'm not even going to ruin at the end how it gets even, it repeats some very stupid things, but the pacing is very questionable. It seems very slow at times. We rush straight into this whole figuring out which one of us is the 7th storyline, and then slow down and stick with it for the rest of the show. And also, I have talked about romance a lot, but the biggest problem with this show wasn't even any of the complaints I had before, it was romance. I could forgive the other stuff, because when they were trying to figure out who the 7th was, the mental games and talking back and forth was really, really cool. So that could all be forgivable. The romance, however, ruins any chance of that, because I think it's episode 10, I tweeted out when I was watching the series, I was like, oh man, episode 10 is possibly the worst episode of anime I've seen. And that is because all of this stuff they have going on, one of the characters randomly confesses to another character about their love. The love of the person they just met. They have nothing in common, really. It's cliche and cheesy. It isn't developed at all. There isn't anything good about that scene, anything good about that romance. It takes away from the plot. If it wasn't in the show would be the same. Like, they don't even really bring it up later. So if it wasn't there, the show would be the same. It is only there to be fan servicey, I guess. It's just not good. It's terrible. People need to stop, writers, you need to stop throwing in romance where it doesn't need to be, where it doesn't make sense to be, because it just ruins things. It takes away from actual story. Saying 2 characters randomly looked at each other and now they have the hots for each other is not relationship development. Those 2 do not now have a relationship because they want a bone. They are still undeveloped. They still don't know anything about each other. Now they just don't know anything about each other, yet they're somehow in love. So yeah, that was a huge, huge, massive problem above all the other massive problems. But if it weren't for those massive problems, it would be a very good series. And I think if they had a season 2, maybe they could remedy some of the mistakes they made, and I'd be optimistic that they could actually turn it into something really good. And the last anime that I want to discuss for part 1 is the 45th favorite anime of mine that I've watched in its entirety, and that would be Kanan or Kanan, depending on how you would pronounce it. Technically it's Kanan, but since they are Japanese, they pronounce it Kanan. But it was really enjoyable. It was great, cheesy action. It felt like an 80s action movie, kind of like Black Lagoon, only maybe not as good for me. Thinking back, actually, it does have a lot of similarities with Black Lagoon, but it's not as realistic, mind you. But it's not that Black Lagoon was terribly realistic either, but still, you get what I'm saying. It was enjoyable. The action was great. Not terribly memorable for me. It's been a while since I watched it, but even after I watched it, it wasn't terribly memorable. The basic premise is that it's about this chick who is sort of like a super soldier, and she goes around doing action movie things. I think there's some sort of disease she's trying to stop from getting spread or something like that, some sort of government secret disease she's trying to capture. Some crazy stuff going around like an 80s action movie, and that's pretty much the best description I have of it. So it is really good, but while I did enjoy it and think it was really good, it falls short compared to the top 44. So that's pretty much all my thoughts for part 1. So I want to split this into 3 parts, because after recording this, I know that this has got to be at least like an hour worth of video or something like that. It depends on how much I edit it down and cut stuff out. But pretty much this is where I'm going to leave part 1. Part 2 sometime next week, and then part 3 hopefully sometime next week as well. I wanted to put them all up like day after day, 3 days in a row, but I don't think I'll have time for that. So yeah, part 1 for now. Numbers 44 to 23 will be up sometime early next week, and maybe sometime late next week I'll have up my top 22. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Like I said before, if you want any help finding any of these 22 anime that I just talked about, I will be totally happy to help you down in the comments if you have any questions about them, if you want to discuss them. Also, I could totally do reviews of any of these in the future. If you guys want me to rewatch them and do a series review on any of them, I'd be completely happy to do that. Just all up to what you guys want. So I hope you guys enjoy. I know you guys have been asking a lot what are my favorite anime and what are the anime that I've seen. So hopefully you'll finally get a little bit of answers here when I get done with all 3 parts of this. And I really do hope you enjoyed, and thank you guys so much for 250 subs. We're almost at 300 now, so this video's taken a while to make, and I still got 2 other parts to make. I still have to edit this and everything. There's still a lot of work to be done on my part, but by the time you see this, that work will be done, so no point in saying it. But either way, like if you like this video, comment down there. Tell me what you thought of tell me what you think of all 22 of these. Tell me what you thought of me seeing them, what you thought of me liking or disliking about them, or what I liked or disliked about them. And like I said, I think I liked every single one of these. I don't think I've seen an anime that I didn't like. I think Accell World and Taboo Tattoo are objectively bad. I think those 2 were kind of bad anime, but I still liked watching them. I don't think I've come into something that I've watched in its entirety and didn't like it in some way, or else I wouldn't have watched it, you know? But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. I got way off topic. And follow on Twitter if you want as well. I'll try to keep you updated there on stuff for the channel. That is it, so thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.